If there's one thing Suffolk County District Attorney Rachael Rollins has made clear during her first year in office, it's that she's not one to shy away from a fight. First, there was the pushback over a plan not to prosecute most cases of 15 low-level crimes, a plan she ran on, as she reminded us last year right here in Greater Boston.
Suffolk County made it very clear that they want me to lead this way, and I'm going to.
And she has. Just a few months into her term, she teamed up with Middlesex DA Marion Ryan to file a lawsuit aimed at blocking federal immigration officials from arresting people inside Massachusetts courthouses, and at least temporarily they've gotten their way while the case plays out in the courts. Then in September, Rollins went head-to-head with a municipal court judge who refused to honor requests from her prosecutors to dismiss low-level charges against protesters of the controversial so-called Straight Pride Parade in August. The state's highest court ultimately sided with Rollins, overruling that judge. And just today, she won a victory with the Supreme Judicial Court justice against another Boston judge, successfully arguing she had the power to drop the 2011 misdemeanor theft conviction of a Somali immigrant who could have been deported if that had stayed on his record. In this case, Rollins' general counsel went before Judge Michael Coyne to request a new trial. And shortly after that request was granted, the prosecutor filed a motion to dismiss the case, which the court did. But then just days later, Judge Coyne accused the prosecutor and defense attorney of misconduct for failing to tell him that the judge who first handled the case in 2011 had denied 4 motions to grant a new trial. Coyne then reinstated the original conviction, kicked the case back to his colleague, who refused to grant a new trial for the 5th time. But just a few hours ago, an SJC justice ruled Coyne had all the information he needed and that the DA acted within her authority. DA Rachael Rollins joins me now. Congratulations. Good to see you.
Always a pleasure.
Judge said what you did, you had the prerogative to do, to dismiss the case. Is this not the exact same issue that you prevailed on earlier with Judge Sinnott, that essentially you have the unilateral authority to dismiss the case should you choose? No?
It's like that. It's like that. But I think what is interesting about this one is we utilized the interest of justice. And so Rule 30 permits us to look at things and say, is this just? Is this fair? Right? The other one with Judge Sinnott was more about our prosecutorial discretion, which we've had for over close to 200 years. So this, similar, but a little bit different.
Well, let me read you near the end of Justice Lowy's decision. The issues before me do not include, and then he listed 4 things. Here's one of them. Whether the Commonwealth's decision to assent to a motion based on immigration consequences was or was not appropriate. So fill in the blanks for people at home. What is the rationale? Why is it appropriate for you to reconsider a sentence after the fact because of what I think you call the negative immigration consequences for this man in this case?
Yeah, I mean, this individual committed a misdemeanor crime 9 years ago. It was larceny under 250, and other normal people call that shoplifting. No one is saying that is a good thing. He was 19 when he did it, and ultimately, I don't believe that after 9 years of behavior that is everything consistent with our juvenile system, with our probation department, he's rehabilitated. He's working. He's paying taxes. He's done very well.
He was charged with other crimes in between, including threatening a witness.
There were absolutely some things that he did in his teenage years that we are not saying are good behavior, but I believe the extreme collateral consequence of being sent to Somalia, where he spent 48 hours 28 years ago, is something I couldn't sit by and allow to happen.
Literally 2 days, by the way.
Literally 48 hours, 2 days.
So you said a lot of time had passed and he was rehabilitated. What if he wasn't? What if only, I don't know, a year had passed, but the consequences were still the same? He'd be sent back to a country where not only he'd only spent 2 days of his life, had absolutely no connection, from what I understand, no family. Are you suggesting that in that circumstance, because there hadn't been time for him to fix his life, that you might not have done the same thing?
No, what I'm saying is we look at every circumstance, we slow everything down. So, Jim, I've been asked for a rapist, for example, an individual who was found guilty of rape, served their time, and is now going to be deported. There are immigration consequences as a result of that behavior. And I said, no, we are not going to step in. That individual is going to be removed back to the country of his origin.
Because of the seriousness of his crime.
Because of the seriousness of the crime. And so what you need to also hear, Jim, is this happens to be involved with immigration. If this were a young person from Charlestown who in 2011 at 19 made a bad decision, and now could not get student loan to go to Roxbury Community College, we'd consider whether that was in the interest of justice or not.
So if somebody was convicted of virtually any crime in Suffolk County, let's say 10 years ago as a young person, and 10 years has passed, they've gotten their life together, should they be essentially having their lawyer call your office and say, I want my I'm serious about this. I want my case reopened, and I think it should be dismissed because I'm worried about student loans, I'm worried I can't get a job, I've reformed my life. Well, why shouldn't they do that?
Well, first of all, we would welcome any call that came into Suffolk County because that's who we are now as under my administration. If their defense counsel wanted, we will look at anything that is presented to us. That's what the government should do. And so for me, the answer is not always going to be yes. In Bilal's circumstance, I am incredibly proud to be the DA today because today justice won.
But just one more thing, just so to be clear, if you mentioned Bilal, if there's another person convicted of the exact same crime under the exact same circumstances and the same history, but didn't face negative immigration consequences, he or she would complete whatever sentence they had been given, but Bilal would see his his conviction eliminated. Is that equitable?
Just to be clear, Bilal did already serve everything he was supposed to almost 9 years ago.
But his conviction is erased. That other person's
conviction. It's not erased, Jim.
What is it?
It's called null pros. So when you run his record, it's going to say larceny under 250 NP, which means null pros. So it's still there. We didn't expunge his record, but now the immigration judge, when looking at that,
can't use that to deport him.
Exactly.
The Globe mentioned, DA, that you had put together a unit to look at these kinds of things. There were 24 plus cases reviewed. How many of them did you act on to avoid unjust immigration consequences, to quote your language?
So I think many of them were still looking at all of these issues. Bilal happens to be the one that's percolated up. But there are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, Jim, of collateral consequences that have nothing to do with immigration. If our justice system was set up to say, you made a mistake, you've served your debt to society, now you're rehabilitated and go out and don't come back to us again. If you can't get a job, if you can't rent an apartment, if you can't, go to school, I just want people talking about this.
How many of those do you think you've revisited?
We've certainly, I think, revisited easily in the last year at least 10.
And dismissed those cases?
Not necessarily all of them. I gave you the example of the individual who raped somebody.
Oh, you mean you've looked at them?
We've looked at them.
How many of them have led to dismissal of the original case?
We've done that, I'd say, in a handful of...
And what was the most serious crime in those cases, do you know?
I think many of those crimes were nonviolent misdemeanors. I just need to say this. It's a harder, obvious argument to make when there are victims involved. And I understand people might say with the shoplifting, there is a victim of the cart operator that Mr. Bilal stole the product from. What I'm saying is 55 to 60 hours of work a week. He's paying taxes. His employer wrote on his behalf, as did a nonprofit he's been involved in. This is a case I'm proud of.
You know this obviously much better than I, but it's pretty clear that the thing that your platform that 80% of the voters in Suffolk County embraced, because it couldn't have been clearer, a lot of people in the justice system have a real serious problem with. One of these judges in this case said that you intentionally misled. I think your lawyer did. I think that was Judge Coyne. Judge Kelly said your action, your motion was rooted in deception. Obviously, Justice Lowy didn't agree with either of those things, but there's an animus directed at your office, look at your face, from the judiciary. How do you deal with this? Case by case by case going down? Is that how you have to deal with it?
Every day.
So how do you explain this?
I explain it that the overwhelming majority of judges, not all of them, are former prosecutors. I sat on the JNC under Governor Patrick.
Judicial nominating.
Right. People are invested in the system working the way that it is right now. And what I'm telling you is judges aren't elected, and neither are police officers. They both play an incredibly important role in the system. Please hear me. But I am doing exactly what I said I would do, and I am doing exactly what the people of Suffolk County that voted want me to do. And I'm open to hearing suggestions about how we can do this differently and always improving. But in this circumstance with Mr. Bilal, I stand 100% behind my position, which is hope, opportunity, justice and equity as opposed to I'm right, send him back to where he was born.
Is part of the animus directed at you?
I mean, I don't know.
You personally. You do know what you think. What do you think?
What do you think?
Well, I don't know what I think. I'm asking you. You're the one the animus is directed. You do, don't you?
Well, here's what I would say. I'm up for whatever fight this system has for me. I've beat things far bigger and stronger than this.
Rachael Rollins, congratulations on yet another win.
Thank
the
you.
SJC, very good to see you. DA Rachael Rollins.